Dear viewers of Art Dommage, this is my first lecture in English, because I have noticed that there is still very little on this topic on the internet, and the English language is, of course, a better means of transport than the German language today. Please forgive me for the mediocre pronunciation. I have not been in English-speaking countries for years. My name is Angelika Dahlhaus and I am the artistic head of the channel Art Dommage and German Academy for Spiritual Cultural Renewal around the world in the coming centuries. These readings are based on the lectures of the great Theosophist A.E.Powelll. We are starting now, and I would like to point out that this is already the third of the Devachan lectures. In the physical world, many of our thoughts are mere fragments. In the Devachan, on the other hand, the dreamer duplicates these fragments and patiently considers them in all their details, in all the possibilities of their most glorious execution. And he revives them with a liveliness that cannot be compared with nothing on earth. He builds designs, models them in all their most diverse possibilities, and throws them into the world of forms. These can then be the inspirations for people who have already brought their brain in the direction of higher intelligence. Thus, the spiritual awakening works more and more with the celestial world. This awakening people can then develop their plans and furthermore also on requests to reform plans, philanthropic work. As we also try something, let ourselves be inspired. From the radiant throat material of a single being, wonderful changes can then arise. And in his dreams, the spiritual person then brings more and more into this. However, one must bear in mind that the ordinary average person cannot really suddenly produce new lines of thought, of affection and veneration in the Devachan due to the limitation he imposes on himself on earth beforehand. So he can't bring something completely new there, but what he has already produced, he can intensify more and more. In this intensity will allow him to work on physical projects with even stronger motivations in the next life. Probably astrology also plays a very big role here. Which time he chooses to get exactly in the constellation, that he receives support from the stars in his predetermined way. This is quite interesting if you then, even as we do from time to time, look at the current chosen constellation. The ones that you did not choose by chance, but even in the Devachan, and then you will also understand more why and how you feel entrusted in this life. You don't understand astrology if you don't have this background of knowledge about the Devachan plane, as well as the astral mental level. Then you believe that the planets may be the culprits of the current misery. You move it there and away from you. You can only really understand something about it esoterically. Come to further forces that surround the soul in the Devachan. There are inhabitants of this sphere, many of whom are very receptive to the striving of the person who has entered and are also very happy to react to it. We must bear in mind that the soul has prepared its thinking, its striving in the previous earthly life. One could easily imagine that when a person rises to a level of such transcendent power, he will be driven into a completely new action in completely new paths. But this is not the case, as already said. Neither the mental body nor the other channels are already sufficiently prepared for this. The impressions and impulses for action from below, mainly from the physical, sometimes also determined by the astral basic state of maturity, limits are set in its further receptivity in the Devachan. The sensation of direct high mental vibrations from his own level, he may have developed very little, so he cannot suddenly pick them up and react to them, although they are of course there. Here this means that man does not really initiate any new thoughts, but is limited to what he has already created before and only looks through the only window that open to him, depending on how mature he is for it. Therefore, a colorless, bland, boring personality on earth must necessarily experience a powerless state for local conditions. The rest remains closed to her. You only get what you earn. Nothing is given to you, so to speak. Even grace exists only for the meritorious and only if he becomes a better servant of the world. And what is grace? It is nothing more than the shortening of negative, serious karma processes that he would have had to go through without mercy. This is where forces work that cannot be grasped by us mortals. Perhaps it is the intensity of selfless love which a person could express in himself, but not yet to which the Devachan would reacts. So a person usually takes in the Devachan only the mental furniture that he possesses, no less and no more. It is therefore of the utmost importance that he makes his thinking in physical life as accurate and precise as possible, because otherwise he already greatly restricts the benefits in the Devachan. For this, the many thought trainings, inner occult training, and also religious schools from antiquity to the present day. From this perspective, the Devachan, like the astral world, is a world of effects, not of causes, whereby each person is limited to his individual levels of perception and his ability to value. What he appreciates are the treasures here. The more connection he had to the outside world, the more starting points or focal points he has for his development in Devachan. It turns out that, as well as for the diversity of the worlds, the simplicity of the inner development in the Physian life must be committed. We should develop a certain understanding or comprehension for everything. This is a development of awareness at all levels. From the point of view of the next lives, on the other hand, the topic of Devachan is essentially a world of causes, because in it all experiences are processed into the future character that now arises when man comes down again to the next incarnation, and for this the stars make themselves available to him. The Devachan plane, the seven heavens into which we enter through our worked vibrations, is therefore the immediate consequence of the last earthly life, which of course in turn is the consequence of the surrogates of the life in the heavens and the locations of the earth, as well as the astral levels which we have passed through for the reflection and expansion of consciousness. Now we are preparing the way for the next stay here and now. The way in which man's view is determined by set small peepholes from large wide panoramic windows through which we look can best be illustrated by a concrete example, namely music and art. A person who has no music in his soul, or only knows the standby noise of a radio, has very small windows in his way. A person who has a musically large panorama, on the other hand, faces an extraordinary power after a physical death and the time of purification in the celestial worlds. The degree of which he can now react to it is determined by three factors. If we want to stay with the analogy of window glass, we can describe these three factors as follows. First, the size of the glass. Second, its color. And third, the quality of its material. So, if man on earth could only appreciate a certain kind of music, he is obviously now limited to this aspect. In addition, his ideas of music are probably colored unilaterally, so that they can only allow certain musical vibrations, or they are even made of such bad material that they distort and darken everything that reaches it. In this case, the world not resonate in all in the Devachan levels. However, if we assume that his windows are more suitable through beauty, appreciation, joy and worship of the incomprehensible, he receives through this 3 different groups of impressions. Angelic impressions, which we could not have ever fantasized in dreams. This is because on earth his natural oscillation was too low, but by listening to practicing this beautiful music, he has already developed certain spiritual organs, which now make him receptive and mature for it. More highly developed souls he now finds there. Their music is indescribably blissful and glorious for him. There is no religion and spirituality on earth that does not cultivate the music, the choral singing, the single voice, the interplay of the earthly instruments for the worship of God. The spiritual world. Here the man feels the music. Its vibrations have an increasing and extremely cleansing effect on him. In a cathedral with course, no man can maintain dirty thoughts. So strong is the synthesis of man and angel, which are all an expression of the orderly movement in the forces of a higher world. Something like an image of the music of the spheres in it, because on this higher level all movements and all activities bring out harmonies in sound and color throughout the universe. Art created by man with the heavens. Artists such as Friedrich Schiller and Beethoven were inspired by this level and brought it down through the boundaries of mechanical instruments made of earthen material for the people on earth, but also many unknown artists all over the world today. But they are rarely discovered by the mass of people, since the mass is always glued to each other like a muddy clay-like plane, through mutual obedience, fashion, trends. Dark art, meanwhile inspired by Ahrimanic entities, with the power that embraces the entire planet Earth. Then the human being, without his doing, lacks the sensitivity to higher hearing frequencies. However, there is still music on the internet that puts us in higher vibrations. For example, Gregorian music, Indian Gandhara music, instrument music of almost all instruments, also music of peoples and religions in the glory of God. Those who have trained themselves are certainly guided by angelic hands into the right channels or led to the right places with the instrument of their own intuition, one can certainly discover them in the oversupply as soon as the spiritual organs are prepared for it. Indifference, undirected thoughts, material, does not lead you there. Our thoughts must be filled with the longing of the pure, true, and beautiful, even in the electronics area. There are these love frequencies. You can discover it. But whoever wants to deal with it more deeply must, in order not to be misguided, go over all the higher spiritual paths of the white brotherhood, over humanity, beyond all religions. Only the pure will meet the pure, to become receptive to it. Religions are still certain restrictions for the not yet universal thinking person. But as Goethe says, the master finds himself in the restriction. Only the intensity of devotion and selfless love for all beings depends. The universal spirit finds its essence in Jewish music, in Christian music, in Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Irish, Indian, symphonic, in simple piano music, in singing, in the singing of all the public in the world to God, old and new music, depending on its orientation at the moment. Despite all the Ahriman's superiority, there will nevertheless be a great expansion with its music in the next few centuries. The classics will be somewhat in the background, because their traditions are often very binding. In the operas, for example, which the new man will put down without rejecting them. For example, the organ music, the classical Bach, etc., will transform and make the sphere music resound. At the moment, there are still too few souls who can accept these inspirations. There is more and more in the churches as meditation music. The universal man will continue to open many windows and escape the all too stuck restriction of traditions. The man is currently very overloaded with fame, money, reviews by the media, personality, cult, all that will have to go in a new area of spiritual knowledge and purification. Today, in the dividing Kali Yuga, of course, the lower drive-controlled, money-related mass music prevails. This includes the music which is often listened in connection with consummation of alcohol. As a result, the nervous system is brought into a Luciferian vibration of mutual group feeling. Everything about brutal, loud, rough music, influencing the subconsciousness with lyrics and sounds, often leads to occupations of artificial elements which then continue to make people dependent on superstars. The karma of the superstars is therefore not good. They take out these childish ages and attract the energies of the masses. It can come to the point that people are shamelessly, unworthy, ugly, and childishly dragged into the sub-animal up to obscene stimulations and thus gates close after his physical life the doors. If he wants some day to enter there, he had closed them by himself. It's a bad picture, but it's the truth. The opposite is the loving and selfless heart that opens up to someone, only wants to do good to him without greed and exploitation of his living energy. For the young man, the indescribable, unfeigned romantic dimensions are quite present in everyone as a preparation for higher and heavenly togetherness. But more and more plumping and physical impulsive deformations of the young body brings young people even around this heaven on earth. All thought and feeling in the Devachan, both one's own and that of the other beings, is expressed indescribably fulfilling in an enchanting but never expressible by words series of ever-changing chords, as by Mills' A.E.Powelll sharps of heavenly musicians. The musical manifestation of the radiant life in the celestial world forms the background for all other experiences there. They merge with the supernatural colors, feeling and poetry in bliss. Second, among the inhabitants of the mental level, there is an order of devas or angels who devote themselves especially to music and regularly express themselves through it much more comprehensively than the others. The Hindus call them Gandharvas. A person who appreciates the music will attract its attention, come into contact with you and your music, and gain a lot of wisdom from this encounter, because they use types of overtones and variations that were completely unknown to man before. Thus, this will emerge far richer from the heavenly life than he was at his entry. His earthly activity, or even just perception, has therefore met with infinitive resonance in the Devachan and has been increased there. Third, he will now, with the highest appreciation of music, also listen to his fellow human beings. There is the heavenly world. Many great composers are there and produce a much more magnificent music than the one for which they are known on earth. In fact, a large part of the inspiration of earthly musicians is only a faint echo of the music from the mental level, which they have only come close to feeling here. The experience of a person who was painter would be similar. He too would have the same three possibilities. Firstly, he takes the natural order, the plain vase, which is expressed in color and sound. Secondly, he understands the color language of the Devas, an order of beings who light up with each other and communicate in magnificent colors. And thirdly, he takes the color creations of the great artists on the mental level. These same possibilities are open to a person in all other directions of art or thoughts, though that there is always infinitely much to experience and to learn. For us, this means that we open the gates of art. In this darkest phase of the afterbeach of Kali Yuga, art has become a depraved playing field of egoists, and nothing in the heavenly worlds will resonate with these platitudes. On the contrary, dark, ugly entities of the astral plane will take over these no artists and bind them to their own distorted images for longer periods of times, depending on how many people have involved them with their depravities. Artists with their managers have manipulated people to get money and fame. These viruses are more dangerous than those physically detectable in the microscope. Many people today have come into this life with God preparations in the last incarnations, but they live with winding forces. Since they could not turn to the divine, were often too strongly withdrawn by the opposing forces, and then rather hanged their dull drives into the high social circles. With these dull sensory organs, they later could not grasp the spiritual dimensions of art. In the end, they often descend in front of the TV or computer, the present-day windows of the opposing forces, in an anonymous, soul-darkening confusion in the course of their lives. Then the old man today often becomes stupid instead of wisdom. These described whole crystal clear connections are still largely unknown today. In a few hundred years they will then be common property. We in our Academy for Cultural Renewal feel tasked with many others to make people in contact with beautiful sounds and images. I hope now, dear listeners, that despite my moderate pronunciation, you were able to follow these occult contents, which can bring about an enormous change in our daily lives. I look forward to comments, and if you want, you are welcome to follow a playlist of my own visual art. A couple of them is translated in English. The link can be found in the info box. I now thank you for your attention and wish you a life that extends into infinity in a divinely blessed way. Your Angelika Dahlhaus.